Hey, what's up everyone? In this video, I'm going to show you how I built this shelf layout from start to finish. And you may be thinking, that doesn't look done. But it actually is. And so as we get into the video here, I'll explain why this is actually complete. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about why this layout is actually complete. So this layout will serve two main purposes. One, for exploring operations outside of just a single industry switching layout. And two, to explore those operations and then convert that into some car forwarding software that I want to write for a future layout that I have in mind. Now I know there's JMRI and I know there's some other products out there, but I'm a software developer by trade. It's what I do for a living and I find it very enjoyable. So I figured, well, why not write my own? And I also have a very specific vision on how I want that software to operate. And none of the software that's out there now actually does that. And the only way I'm going to get that is by either hiring someone or writing it myself. And I enjoy coding, so I'm going to write it myself. Anyway, so there's no need for scenery. This is a very temporary layout as well, so it can be torn down after a couple of years whenever we decide to move, because I guarantee the walls are not going to be the same in the new house, wherever that happens to be. So I wanted to make sure that I didn't invest too much time into things that were not necessary. And again, the necessary things were operations and writing that software. And so the nice thing about this layout is that I can represent different freight operations and also passenger operations as well, because I have interest in both. So enough about that for now. Let's head over to the computer and take a look at the actual track plan. Okay, so before I reveal the actual track arrangement, let me show you what kind of space I have to work with here. So I have approximately 19 and a half feet of width by 15 inches of depth. And this is on the north side of my basement on the wall. And I cleared a bunch of stuff off so I can put this on there. And it's a good amount of space to represent, a decent amount of different types of operations. And I didn't want to just base this off of just something that I pulled out of a hat. I actually wanted to base it off of some sort of prototype. So now, looking at the track arrangement here, this is actually based off of the Toronto, Hamilton, and Buffalo Railway in Canada, which actually existed up until the late 80s. And it was only about an hour away from where I grew up. So I thought it was pretty close to home. I thought it was a pretty cool railroad to explore. They actually had a lot of innovations, and I think I read somewhere that they were nicknamed the largest small railroad in Canada. And so I got intrigued, so I started looking into it. And in Hamilton, Ontario, you can still look at Google Maps to see some where their tracks were. Operated by the Canadian Pacific now, who they got absorbed into, I believe in 1987. And so I thought, hey, well, here's the track plan. Let me just see what I can do. And so what you're looking at is basically a very condensed version of what's known as the Hamilton Belt, which basically connects Kinnear Yard with the industrial sectors along the waterfront in Hamilton, Ontario. And so the left side of this layout is going to represent Kinnear, or it could represent staging, depending on what type of operations I want to explore. And the right side is what I'm calling Industrial Sector E, which has a variety of different industries. And I can interchange with the CN. You can see here I have an interchange track. Now, I don't know if the TH and B actually interchanged with the Canadian National, even though they do have they both shared the same area and they both had tracks in the same area. But it seemed plausible, and I figured, well, it's another type of operation I can include. So I thought that was cool. And I always wanted to have an interchange on my layout. Connects to the rest of the world, so to speak. So, so I thought this was a great little layout to build and get all these different types of operations in. We've got the staging and the yard operations on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, we have the industrial stuff and the interchange ops as well. And I can even simulate push-pull commuter operations as well. On the left side, I've got, it's basically a point-to-point. So any point-to-point, you can kind of simulate push-pull commuter ops. So thought that was pretty cool. And so, so I decided on this. There's just enough operational interest to have a wide variety of different types of things that I can program up in the software. And so, yeah, so from here, we'll get the rest of the video will basically be the construction of it. And yeah, we'll just get into it. All right, so here's what I've accomplished so far. I've got these 4 rails installed here, and I also was playing with the shelf brackets to see if I really like the height. I think I'm going to keep it around 53-ish inches for the height of the layout. It's just above chest level for me, so that's kind of cool. I'll be looking straight onto the trains as they're roaming around there, so that'll be I think a nice perspective. And then I had to repatch and paint these walls because I had really beat them up. They look a lot nicer now. And then next is to transfer the level over to this wall here. And to do that, I picked up this Bosch self-leveling crosshair level, laser level. Switch it on. You can see it found its level there, which is really nice, really handy. And so right now it's centered on the middle of the stud in this wall. There's another one over here. And so I set the height to match up to the center of these screws on all these other rails, which is how I handled it on this side here. So all I have to do, so you can see the laser wraps around, and all I have to do is make a mark right there, and then I'll have the center of that screw hole, and then I can match them out. And I've been kind of just checking the level after I install it, after each one, and it's been perfectly level each time, so I'm really happy with this this new little toy here. So that's coming up next. I have to install some 30-inch rails over here and here. These are 4-foot ones over here just because there's more room down this way. You can see I've got there's the water meter down there. And also I'm going to have some other stuff down here. My workbench is going to be over here, so I don't want the rails going all the way down. So that's what's next. Got to put that one in, and we'll see how that was measured out. Alright, so before I go any further, just to give you a heads up on this one, I'm using these premium interior cabinet screws to hold these into the studs. The rails have like a sticker on that says use number 12 2-inch panhead screws. This is what my hardware store had, which is going to be more than enough to hold these things up and carry the weight. I mean, it's built for cabinetry, and we all know that cabinets get pretty heavy, so that's what I'll be using for that in case anyone was interested in what type of screws I'm using. Okay, so I've made a mark here where my laser level was set, and I'm just going to take this screw, I'm just going to create an indentation here just so I know where it's going to sit. And I'll take my rail, put that in here. Oh, make sure I'm not hitting the wires up here. And then drill it in. Now I'm not going to put it in too hard just yet, just enough to keep it snug, so that I'm going to turn the laser level back on and make sure that this is vertically aligned as well. So I'll do that real quick. Okay, so as you can see, I've got the level up here. We're matched up to our screw, center of the screw, and now I've got it adjusted so that vertically it's also straight up and down as well. So now that that's set, I've got this in here snug enough they don't need to hold it. And so I'm just going to pop a screw in the top part, and then this will be done and secured to the wall. Okay, so got the rail installed. I put some shelf brackets in at the right height, and I slapped my level on here just to double check, and we are perfectly level. So now all I have to do is the same thing for this one, and then bring it around the corner to those two on that wall as well, and then the rails will be installed, and I can start putting the shelf brackets in and start hanging stuff up. Okay, so I have all of the rails installed. As you can see, made my way across around the corner here to these ones. Now when I put this level up here, you're going to notice something. That doesn't look level. So I was like second guessing myself on my procedure here, and it turns out it's not the way I installed it. That actually is fine. If I move this all the way back here, it's level. And that's because I realized there is a slant to this wall. It actually comes, the top of the wall actually comes out a little further than the base. So that's fun. So I'm not going to adjust the rails, there's no problem there, but I will have to shim these two shelf brackets so that there's more of a thickness on the ends than there is towards the wall. So fun thing learning about your house, which walls are slanted and which walls are perfectly fine. So, but all in all set there. So the next step is just to get all the shelf brackets installed. I do have to modify these things. These are 16-inch brackets. Over here, I need it to be 14. So I'm going to have to chop off the end of some of these. I'll have to cut those off with a hacksaw or something. And I also have some 12-inch brackets for this end, or this middle section, but I really only need basically 7 or 8 inches. So I'll have to chop those 12-inch brackets as well. So just a few more modifications to go on the brackets, and then I'll have a nice base, level base, with some shims for the rest of the layout. Okay, so I was going to modify these here, and these are just too long, and there's also some other like little whoop-de-doos over here where you can attach special types of shelving to these things. I would have to either grind these off or use a hacksaw, and I only have a hacksaw at the moment, and it turns out it's pretty rusty, so I need a new one of those, but I didn't really feel like doing all that cutting. So what I did is I went back to the home store, and I found these ones, which have basically a straight edge at the top, and a lot smaller ones too. I found some ones that'll fit perfectly for the longer sections, and then I have these ones here that are a little bit too long for what I'm going to need, but I've decided I'm actually going to do a little bit more creative bench work around that, so I don't have to do that. So all I have to do, plug these in, and I don't have these little hoops over here anymore to worry about. It's just a straight line. However, the other ones were pretty much level. These ones have a little bit of a pitch to it. These are Rubbermaid ones. It's just what my home center had at the moment, and I didn't feel like ordering anything and waiting for it. I did have some suggestions on particular shelving brackets for melamine shelves, and I just didn't want to wait, and these were available. And so chances are I would have to do some shimming anyways, because these walls aren't exactly straight up and down. So in order to accommodate that, I'm going to take and make some inserts for these things, because they have a little groove in here. And so what I'm going to do is just take this old 2x4 that I had from a previous project. I'm going to cut it down, rip some strips out of it that'll fit right in here. Just have to measure this out, and then I'll fill those in with that, screw them in so they don't move, and then I'll have a corrected level over here. Also, for this section over here, because this wall slants outward, it turns out that these brackets are now level, but they're too low. So I'll have to cut strips to fill those in and raise the benchwork up just enough so that everything is on a level line. So all I have to do now is start measuring these things out, start cutting some wood. Okay, so we'll measure the inside width here. And it looks like it's a hair shorter than 7/16 of an inch. So we'll take the wood over to the table saw and we'll make strips of approximately that width. Okay, I'm going to take my first cut here, and I'm going to make sure it fits before I do anything else. We'll just test that. That looks pretty good. So now I can go ahead and I can cut up a whole bunch more strips. Okay, strips are cut and inserted. I had to cut specific angles to make sure everything stays level. The last thing I did was I drilled a hole in the side and just put a screw in there just to keep the pieces in place. You can see I've been working on those ones back there. I still have 4 more to do, but now if I put the level on here, we could see we're nice and level. So almost done with those, and then once that's complete, it's time to start building some bench work. So here I printed out the track plan from AnyReal 6 onto a few sheets of paper. As you can see here, I included a 1-inch grid so I could actually measure everything out. And I just took a ruler and a pencil and I figured out all the different modules that I want to create with this. So there's going to be 4 modules total. 1, 2, 3, 4. The second one is kind of somewhere near the middle of the room, and that one is going to have the DCC base station underneath of it. And so all my power will come from here and go outward that way. Nothing complex, but it's a central location. And also, if I have a tethered throttle, this will give me the most play and where I can actually move. So if I have it over here, I won't be able to move all the way down here with the tether. So if I have it smack dab in the middle or somewhere near there, then I can move either direction until I experiment with wireless or something. So for now, I actually created the underside of this module. I still have not put anything on top of it yet, but this is where I started because this is one of the more complex areas. So the wall kind of juts out here, and so I have to create bench work to go around that. And because I want all of these to be removable, I have to make sure that these pieces all kind of make sense. So we'll head over and I'll show you what I did here, and we'll go from there. So here is the underframe of the module. This is kind of wide, so it's hard to get it all in here, so I'll have to bear with me here. I'll do the best I can. But it's really simple construction. So there's just 4 cross beams, and then there's this little section over here, which is where the wall wraps around. A couple interesting things to note is I took these pieces over onto the table saw and the crosscut sled, and I created some notches. This is where the wall brackets go, so this will sit on top of the wall bracket, and this will prevent the module from moving left and right. I still have to figure out how exactly I want to attach it so it doesn't go this way. I'll probably end up clamping it down with some dedicated like C-clamps or something. That way I can take it off easy and get it back on and get it stable. But I do want it to sit on here so it doesn't move this way, so everything matches up. And then did the same thing for where the wall bracket's going to be over here. I put some holes in here so that the wiring can go through. And instead of a hole over here, I actually just created a notch, kind of like what I did with where the wall brackets are going to sit. And the wiring will come up over this and down through here. Now this hole is interesting. It actually serves 2 purposes. And one is, of course, the wire is going to go through it to the other side. And 2, it allowed me to get in here, drill a hole, and put a screw in here. I have an extension piece that attaches to my drill. And so I was able to actually, because you can't fit a drill head in here. It's just too small. And so what I did was I drilled this hole for the wire, and I was also able to get this in here, you know, like this, all the way over there, and then get that hole drilled and screwed in there. And then there's another screw, sorry for the quick movement, another screw on this side holding this in place here. So a little bit of a creative workaround for that, but hey, you know, depending on the space, you need to get creative. But that's basically it. It's extremely light. I think it only weighs, I don't know, maybe just like 2 or maybe 3 pounds. It's really light wood, really easy to carry, and so that's going to go up over there. So we'll go over there and I'll show you how it sits on there. Here we are over with the benchwork on top of the brackets. As you can see, they fit nicely on top of here. I just have a bandy clamp holding it down for now until I figure out which dedicated clamping I want to put on here. As you can see, the holes here just come just above this so I can get the wires through nice and easy. And it also helps to line everything up and keep things stable, and also lets me clamp right onto this. So that made that easy. And then this is the portion which is wrapping around the wall. If you notice, it's not completely square, and that's because these walls are not completely square. So what I'm going to end up doing is I made this a little bit shorter, or depth-wise, from where I actually want it to be, because this one's going to come out a little further, and so I'm going to end up shimming the front before I put the fascia on it. So the fascias of each one are going to be shimmed so that they match up evenly, which will correct that sort of weirdness going on in the back. And then the fascia will wrap around, kind of curve down this way, and continue on over there. But so far so good. I'm just getting started. Still got 3 more modules to go. I still haven't put the tops on these yet. So that is these sheets of hardboard down here, which were pretty cheap, and they're sturdy enough. I'm not going to be doing anything crazy on there. It's literally just going to be a railroad just to practice operations and get my program started. So that's all it's going to be for. So there's going to be no scenery or anything like that. So it doesn't really need to be, really thick plywood or anything. But so far so good. All right, so I'm going to go create some more modules, and we'll be back after that. All right, so here's a quick tip when working with soft wood on your miter saw or chop saw. So I'm using soft wood for the bench work for my layout here. So in order to get some really clean cuts without any tear out, if you just do it like this, just run it through, you notice there's a lot of fraying, and you get some tear out. On this piece you can really see it. If I could focus here. See that? Looks terrible. So, quick tip, once you find your line, just take some painter's tape, run it around that line, or, well, mark it off, then run the line over the tape so you know where it is, and then run it through that. So then, just peel the tape away. You got a nicer cut. So there's a little fuzz because this is a terrible piece of wood, but there's no tear out. You see that? Looks pretty good. All the modules have been completed as far as the frames go and installed into place. Again, just using these bandy clamps to clamp them against the wall brackets, or the shelf brackets I should say. And then if I come in here, you'll see they're held together to each other using some bolts and some wing nuts. So this will allow me to keep them nice and level, because this one actually dips down a little further than this, just because of the weight of everything on this side of it. So not that it weighs a lot, but the way that it's kind of resting here, there's more module to the left of the bracket than there is to the right. So it's not exactly balanced, like you can't just balance it there. So it does dip a little bit, so I installed these bolts and wing nuts just to keep everything on the level at the top so that I don't have any issues when installing track and things like that. And then same thing over here and also on the other side. So the next thing to do is to install these sheets on top, so I got to figure that out. I also have the fascia to consider too. I plan on shimming parts of the fascia here. As you can see, this does stick out just a little bit further. But I don't know, I might actually do something decorative with this middle piece so that I don't have to shim that exactly. So I have some ideas there, so I could save myself a little bit of work. And then up here is where I'm planning on installing the DCC command station. So I'm going to go with a wireless system for this particular layout. I've decided, so I'll put the base station, the wireless base station up there, and I'll put a little white conduit that comes down here so all the cables will come down under there and up into the bottom of the module to keep everything nice and hidden and clean looking. And the reason I went with wireless for this one is it's 19 feet long, and my cable only stretches so far from my power cab. So even if I put the power cab PCP plate right here, I still can't reach all the way down there, and I can reach most of the way down here. So I figured, well, I've wanted a wireless system for when I build my really large layout that I want to do in the future, whenever I get a new house. But for now, I figured, well, I'll try it out on this one because it'll be useful, and I'll also be able to take that with me to the next layout as well. So that's the reasoning behind that, and just because I think wireless things are cool. So, all right, so the next thing to do is to cut some of these up and get them placed up on here and tacked down, and then we'll be back after that. Okay, so the benchwork is essentially complete minus the fascia. I'll be doing the fascia later because I actually want to have like about an inch or so lip in the front of it on top. I'm not going to be putting any scenery on this. It's strictly going to be for operations and writing my program. So as a security measure so cars don't roll off the side, I'm going to put the fascia up a little bit, kind of like how I did on my other layout for the staging shelves. Also, this box frame construction for this benchwork, I didn't really record a lot of it because I actually recorded some of that in one of my other videos. I'll put a link in the description below where I go into more detail on how I work on this stuff. It's pretty simple. You basically create boxes and screw them together, so nothing crazy. So the next step is to start putting some cork on this, just to have a layer of sound insulation and some extra thickness to where I'm going to actually nail the tracks down. I don't plan on gluing any of the tracks. I'm going to try to use only track nails for the whole thing. That way I can, take them out and reuse them on a future layout. This is basically temporary until we find a new home, and then I can start building the new one. So there's that. So I'm going to get to working on installing some of this, and then I'll be back right after that. Alright, so to install the cork, all I did was I extended my workbench here, just rolled the cork out, and then took one of the modules, top down, put it on top, and then just took a Sharpie and traced a line around the entire perimeter. That way you know where to cut it. And then all I have to do after that is just put some wood glue down on top of it, and then put the cork on top, and then just put some weight on it, and then that should be all set. I also might just put the glue on the cork like this, and then just set this on top, and then just put weights on top of this. That might actually work out too. So either way, it'll get glued down. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then do it to the other ones, and then I'll be back after that. Okay, just a quick little aside on the type of wood glues that I typically use in my projects. So I use Titebond. There's original 2 and 3. Each one has different properties depending on what the application is that you want to use it for. So this is your general purpose all-around wood glue. It sets up pretty quick. It's really strong. It's usually stronger than the wood that it's attaching itself to. And then Titebond 2 takes a little bit longer to set up, but it has water-resistant properties to it after it's done. And then Titebond 3 takes the longest to set, but it's waterproof after it's done. So depending on the application, I reach for whichever one that I'm going to use here. This one, for this project, for the cork, I'm going to use Titebond 2, not because of the water resistance, but because it's going to set up pretty quick, but it's going to take longer than this one. So I'll have more time to move the cork around if I need to. Otherwise, if I use this one, by the time I get to the other end, I'll probably end up ripping the cork if I try to move it. So I'm going to do this one. This will probably take a good, 20-30 minutes before I even want to touch the cork after that. This one would take a lot longer. I don't really need to wait that long. I just need just enough time to move the cork around if I need it. So I'll be choosing this one here. And so I just wanted to give a quick little aside on that in case you were wondering what type of wood glue I'd be using for this. Alright, so everything is corked up top on the modules. There's a couple of spots that I had to work out a couple different bubbles, so to speak, but that's all resolved. And now the next step is to start transferring this track plan up to the modules. So basically what I'm going to do is, when I printed this out, if you could see it, there's a 1-inch grid laid across the entire plan here. So that I'm just going to use that grid. I'm going to measure out from the edges where all the tracks are going to go, and I'm just going to take a Sharpie and some straight edges, and I'm just going to transfer those lines right to the modules, and then I can tack the track down on top of that. So that's the next step, so I'll get to it and start some measuring. Okay, so this little tool came in handy yet again. So this crosshair laser level, basically what I did was I created a 2-inch mark because the track's going to be 2 inches from the fascia, well, the track center will be 2 inches from the fascia and also 2 inches from the back. So this is just 4 inches here. So right smack dab in the middle is 2 inches. Now also, move over here, the track is supposed to be 2 inches from the back of this module as well. So if I were to just start, sorry for the quick movements, if I were to just start creating some dots and connecting some lines, by the time I got over to there, my lines would have been about 1 inch from the back of the module. And that's because of how these walls are not exactly square with one another. So this tool, I'm glad I got it because it came in handy again. So basically what I did was I made a mark here and I just twisted this on its axis here until this line was exactly 2 inches from the back of the module over here. So now all I have to do is make some dots and connect some lines along that laser line, and then I'll be good to go for this part. Now over here it's not going to matter because it's going to curve off that way, and I'll be measuring from the front of the module after that. So it doesn't matter that this wall is not perfectly square with these ones, because at this point the track curves anyways, so I'm not really worried about that. It's just up until this point I want it to be as straight as possible, and so Mr. Laser Light over here was a lifesaver with that. So highly recommend this thing if you're looking for something that's both practical in the sense that you can create some level lines and also create some straight track plans. So, alright, I'm going to get on with it and I'll be right back. All of the lines for the track plan have been transferred over to the modules. Again, I just measured from the edges and using that laser level, a straight edge and a Sharpie, just drew out all the lines on both this side and the other one. And then all I have to do now is to start putting some track down. So I chose Walthers Code 83, and this is one of their new number 5 turnouts. Feels like pretty good quality, so we'll see how it goes once I wire it all up. But yeah, so the nice thing about having each of these modules be removable is that I can take this off of the shelf brackets over onto my workbench, and I can start laying the track out over there. That way I don't have to reach over this because it is 54 inches above the floor, so it's kind of hard to reach over there and to get everything straight. So be taking this over to the workbench in sections, and then we'll pick up after that. Okay, so one quick little tip for drawing these smooth transition curves if you're going the route of just drawing out your track plan. What I found to be helpful was to take a straight edge, like a ruler like this that's bendable, and just put one end down and the other on the other part of the straight edge, and you can hold it down. I was able to hold this down with one arm, just like that, and I just took the Sharpie and I traced the line like that. So having something like this is really useful for that. It gives you a nice smooth curve, and so you can easily, you know, get your track on there in a nice smooth curve. So I found that to be helpful, so hopefully someone out there will find that useful as well. Alright, so when it comes to putting rail joiners on these Walthers turnouts, if you look at the instructions, it says using a sharp blade, cut the plastic webbing and remove the end tie closest to the points. So basically what they're saying is remove this tie and remove these end ties so that you can place the rail joiner on, and then you can purchase some other, you know, tie products so they slip it underneath the rails once they're joined. I found that you don't really need to do that. All you need to do is just take your blade and snip off the rail spikes, these little plastic nubs that represent the spikes. Then you could take your rail joiner and slip it between the rail and the tie, and it works perfectly fine that way. The one thing it will do is it'll push the rail up slightly, or in other words, push the tie down slightly. So depending on the scenery or base you're putting it on, the rail may be raised a little bit. Since I'm using cork, pushing it down kind of pushes it into the cork a little bit, so it's not a big deal, but I just wanted to highlight that in case you wanted to save your ties. You don't have to, you know, cut some other ties off or purchase some other ones and slip them between the rails, between your joints. So a little tip there. I'm fastening my track down using track nails because I want to reuse this track later. So again, this is only going to be a temporary layout for the next couple of years while I write my program and do some operation stuff. So you'll notice that there's no holes on the top of the ties to put the track nails into. But if you flip the Walthers track over, every so often, about every, oh, I don't know, every 10 or 12 ties, there's a hole that's been pre-drilled that doesn't quite go all the way through. So all you have to do is just take a pin vise with a small bit, and then you can drill out the rest of that hole, and then you'll be able to see those holes and nail it down appropriately. So just a little heads up on if you're using Walthers track and you want to use track nails, just be aware that there are pre-drilled holes, they're just not all the way through. You have to finish those yourself. Or if you're not going to use track nails and you want to glue it down instead, that way you don't have holes to contend with later on. So I really like this track and I'm really happy with it so far. I've been testing it as I go, and so far it works perfectly. So really happy with it, and I'll continue on and get the rest of these modules all tracked up. Okay, so all of the track is now laid on top of the modules. Everything has been track nailed into place. And yep, pretty happy with it. So I've been testing it as I've been going along, making sure everything functions properly, all the turnouts work, all the track receives power where it needs to receive it. And so yeah, pretty excited about that. So the next thing is going to be some wiring. But before I can do the wiring, I have to figure this out. So I picked this up. This is the NCE Pro R. So this is the radio enabled version. It has the radio base station, or the wireless base station in it. And so I have the regular power cab. And I thought, well, if I just get a Pro cab plus the wireless base station, I can make the whole system wireless, because the cable is not going to stretch that far. It's 19.5 feet. I mean, yeah, I could put a couple PCP panels on there and unplug and replug and all that stuff, or whatever the rigmarole is. But I really wanted to experiment with this. I got this at a really good price, and so I figured, well, why not? This whole thing has been a lot of fun, and I can't wait to get trains running on it. So yeah, so the next thing is going to be setting this up, getting that hooked up, and that's going to go right up here. Now, what exactly is going to be up there, I'm not sure. I have to measure that thing out, figure out what type of shelving I want to put up here for that. I'll probably end up getting some more shelf brackets to get as close as possible to the depth of what that shelf is going to be. So that's going to be the next step, and then once I have that figured out, then I can start actually wiring it up and getting some trains running. And then once the trains are running, well, it's smooth sailing after that. So yeah, so next, setting this up. Okay, so everything is set up. I've decided to just go with a simple closet-made bookshelf, or whatever it's called. And you know, I was thinking of originally doing like this woodworking type of shelf with the fascia on it and everything, but honestly it's just going to be temporary anyway, so why build all that just to tear it down a couple years later? So just went with something simple. Everything is zip tied to the top of this thing, and the base station, I had it up and going within 5 minutes, connected to a test track, and everything was working. So all I have to do is reach up over here, flip the switch, everything's on, and then take the wireless controller, hit the button, and we're good to go. And then turn it off like that. So yeah, real simple. Couldn't have been simpler. Just basically plugged it in, connected the wires, and we're good to go. So next, I'm waiting for some wire to come in, because I apparently have empty spools of wire. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run some wire channel down the side of this standard here underneath, and then that'll hide the wires going down from the base station. And then after that, it's just connecting the bus line and the feeders to the bus line. I'm going to keep it real simple. When I was testing out as I was going along, you can see I've been moving some cars around just for fun. As I was testing each module, as I was laying the track, I only need one feeder per module, and the whole thing will function. So I'm going to see if I can get away with doing that for the whole thing. So I'll have 4 feeders with a short bus that goes from here to there. And we'll see if I can get away with that. Again, this is temporary, so I don't need it to be elaborate, and I don't want to be bogged down with a whole lot of soldering and everything like that. So, yeah, so next I'm just going to wait for that wire to come in, and then we'll install those, and I'll be back after that. Alright, so I got the wiring done. It was pretty simple. I was able to only use 4 feeders, 1 for each module. And basically what I did is I have these kind of snippable terminal blocks that I cut up. They're just, plastic. There's some stuff I had from a previous project, so I just used those, used what I had. I had to wait for those wires to come in. They finally came in today, and I was able to get everything wired up and neatly wrapped up underneath the module. So essentially what I did was, for each module, they're connected to each of these terminal blocks, so this bus wire kind of just goes along here. But because I want to be able to take these modules apart, I didn't want the bus wire to be continuous, so they kind of terminate at each block and then continue on. And then there's a spot in the middle of each one for the feeder wire for each module. So kept it simple, and if I need to take these apart, all I have to do is loosen the screws here, pop these wires out, and I'm good to go. So give it a little test here. Whoa, focus. And it's alive. Alright, cool. So, next thing to do is actually start to put on some fascia. You can see I have some some plastic draped around everything. That's because I'm getting ready to actually cut up some hardboard here. I'm going to cut up the fascia. I have just enough to create 3 strips out of this at 3 3/8 inches wide, which is just what I need for the whole thing. And I'm going to have about a foot of this stuff to spare. So good thing I don't need to go purchase any new stuff, so that's a relief. And then now, if I can focus this thing properly. There we go. Lights, sound, and action. So I'm going to play with this for a little bit, and then tomorrow I'm going to cut up that fascia and then paint it and then get it installed. I don't know if I'm going to paint it and install it the same day. We'll see how it goes. But for now, yeah, for now I'm just going to have some fun with that, and then I'll be back after I cut up that fascia. Alright, see you then. Okay, so the fascia is now installed. I decided to keep it just the color of the Masonite. I kind of like that. Instead, I just painted each of the screws just so it looked a little bit cleaner. But yeah, so all set there. And then the other thing I did was I filled in these gaps on either side. Basically cut out a piece of pink foam, glued some of this, some more of this cork on top of it, and then just glued that into place. So that's all set at both sides. And the other thing I decided to do was to, just put the name right on the front of it. So this middle section, I kind of chamfered the edges there and just made it look nice so it pops out a little bit more. And I had some of these 2-inch sticker letters, letter stickers, and then just drew a straight line with pencil, tacked them all on there, erased the line, and then good to go there. But yeah, so everything is basically all set. You can see over here, just more filling that in. I've been playing with some operations as well. Everything seems to be going great. And so the next thing is to simply explore more operations, get some more ideas, and then start writing my software. And then after that, it's, just enjoy it and fix any bugs and enhance it however I see fit. So, so that kind of concludes everything here. And yeah, just gonna have some fun with it now. All right, so there we have it. Start to finish on a temporary shelf layout that'll be around for the next couple years while I explore operations and write my software. So for now, the only other thing I really want to figure out is a dust cover. Right now I'm just draping plastic down off of some shelf brackets because I still do woodworking down here. It's a shared space in that sense, so I want to figure that out. But for the time being, plastic draped off of some shelf brackets will have to do until I come up with something that's a little bit nicer looking, a little bit more clever, I guess. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this video and you got some tips and tricks out of it. For now, I'm gonna go run some trains, do some more operations, and thanks for watching. Take care, and we'll see you next time.